get started. No excuses and no regrets. Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. No excuses, no regrets. You're listening to KUHSdenver.com and 360 Performance Talk on a Friday, every Friday at 11 a.m. And right behind me, you see some of the scenes from the World Series where Houston took it in Game 7 against the Dodgers. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but not so much from the perspective of baseball and the hits and the errors and the home runs, which were plenty. We're going to talk about it from the standpoint of, as the song says, breathing and making sure that we understand what is the integrity behind the intangibles. You know, the intangibles, things that you can't really see, but you know they're there because of your experience. You've got the integrity of your experience of delivering that action, that attitude that is an unforeseen feeling inside of you that you know you can just get it done at the right time. And believe me, when you watch the games in the 7 games of the series of the LA Dodgers versus the Houston Astros, there were plenty of intangibles that were felt and executed on very tangible things, like the many home runs that were hit. Who knew? Who knew that that was going to help? Look at baseball as a situation where the best hitters are known to only hit the ball 1 out of 3 times. That's the reality. It's a 300% batting, or 300 batting average, not percent, 300 batting average. And yet the series had such emotional ups and downs. So our theme today is about the intangibles added to one's integrity. If I say it, I get it done, and that it equals finish. That you finish. And it's truly, regardless of the sport, we're going to use baseball as our guide for today, but regardless of the sport, it's the intangibles that really define the champion. The champion who has performed at a level that really shows, exemplifies each player and then the team being in touch with the things you can't see, the intangibles, and making sure that they understand what those are to the point that they can actually call upon it to do what appears to be the impossible to those looking on, the fan. One of my favorite people and one of my friends, my wife, she says to me, she says, you know, the greats make it look easy. And we think it's just outstanding and amazing. But she's right. It's the people that are the greatest that make what we look to be as impossible actions seem simple. And people like Mr. Turner, number 10 for the Dodgers, hitting home runs at the right time to take Game 2. Or Springer for the Houston Astros, hitting an amazing number of home runs during the series, setting untold records about how many home runs, or, regretfully, the number of strikeouts you had as a batter when you look at Bellinger and his efforts. And yet, he came through it sometimes to hit an extra base hit at the right time to catapult the game forward. Or, for all intents and purposes, he's not really a rookie, but he's not been in the league that long, so he seems like a rookie, an unknown that came to light during the series, the World Series, which is Chris Taylor, who comes through as a leadoff hitter against Verlander, of all people, and hits an extra base hit on Tuesday, on October 30th, to get the Dodgers started early and continue to stay in control to win the Game 6 to even the series at 3-3. Lots of intangibles with some integrity behind it that created finishes. Now the ultimate finish is in Game 7, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But let's talk about mindset first. Mindset, that's our first segment. We always talk about that as our first segment of the game, of our sessions today. And mindset for both teams were pretty high. Both teams won over 100 games in the season. And yet I'm going to pull up a newspaper that says it's the World Series. It's let's see, I think it's the Houston Chronicle. which has Mr. Giles coming off the mound at a time when he's the closer, but the Dodgers got into him and were successful and won that game 6-2 in Houston, the first game in any of the playoffs or the World Series that Houston had lost. At that point, they were undefeated. It was a great, great game. I was in Houston for that game, watching the Astros go into defeat, and yet bring it to a time when everything was 3-2 coming out of Houston, and that was a key game for the Dodgers to win at that time. Now, the headline's are really interesting. It's the no closure headline right there. That was very, very interesting to see. Now, there's a few more headlines I'll share with you in just a minute, but let's talk about the mindset there. Now, understand something. We didn't know it at the time, but Giles never comes back as a closer throughout the rest of the series. So in Game 6, he wasn't there, and in Game 7, he wasn't there. And I don't know that anybody really understands why he didn't come back as a closer. Now, that opened the door of optimism, a mindset of optimism for the Dodgers, and perhaps a little bit of a concern by the Astros at the time. Now, I don't know that we'll ever get the real truth unless somebody really gets really honest and forthright in the offseason going into next year and explains a little bit about the mindset and attitudes behind where Giles was at after that game, after being taken out in that game, and then moving forward. But those are slices of what was going on in creating mindsets for both teams. Because remember, it was from there that they moved forward to go on to play the next game in LA, and Game 6 and Game 7. And so it's a home court, basically, home field advantage, for the Dodgers. And they should have been very optimistic, because that one win that they got in Houston was a very optimistic win. People like Bellinger were hitting. You had Chris Taylor was still doing his thing. Turner was doing his thing. The middle of that batting order was doing outstanding work. And so there was a lot of optimism there, which created the first step in a great mindset for them. And with that being said, there was still that uncertainty about the pitching, and a lot of discussion about the mindset. So when you look at mindset, it's not just a whole team thing you're looking at the parts. And in baseball, because there's so much time, it's 9 innings of play. One of the games, of all the many records that were set, one of the games set a record for the most time spent in a World Series game. It was in excess of 5 hours. It was quite the test of our patience for those of you who are either just baseball fans, or you're perhaps an Astros fan or a Dodger fan. In either case, it was a long, long game. Behind me, over my shoulder, you see the manager, Coach Finch, Hinch, talking to a reporter after the win at the World Series. And in his conversations with the press, he was extremely humble about what was going on. And, before that point in time, it was interesting. A lot of different things were creating a mindset for the coaches with regard to Coach Hinch. We had the gesture, the ethnic gesture, which was not very nice, towards Yu Darvish. That's Yu Darvish. The pitcher for the Dodgers, who's Asian descent, and Gurriel, he made a gesture in the dugout and said something in Spanish that was derogatory towards you, and he's been suspended, but the suspension was not immediate, and so that whole thing swirled around as an attitude that may or may not have influenced a mindset. These are those kinds of environmental things I talk about quite often with regard to how does the environment impact you. Like, for example, what's over my shoulder right now, you got Sandy Koufax throwing out a ceremonial first pitch at Dodgers Stadium. That sets a mindset that builds on the successes from Houston, and that, here's a chance for us to go even up in Dodger Stadium in LA. All of those components, the drama, the trappings, the signage, everything from first pitches thrown and ceremonial first pitches thrown by key figures in the Dodger organization are all elements that create a mindset, that set up an attitude towards possibly delivering on your intangibles. But it's your integrity. You add that integrity to our theme. The integrity is, if I say it, I'm going to do it. Or if I've done it, I can do it again. The hitters for both teams, can they do it again? Now, part of the mindset that is, we talk about mindset after the fact, and yet I'll give you some insider information. What I'm going to tell you about is the contention that came out of the press after the winning game, the Game 7 win. There was the thought that Yu Darvish was giving away his pitches, not on purpose, and it started back in Houston, because remember, he was pulled early. Actually, the first pitcher to be pulled in 2 innings. In fact, his start in Game 7, both pitchers were pulled before the 3rd inning, which was a first, another record. And that sets him, that impacts mindset as well. Now, we're going to bridge into skill here in a minute, but I want to just share with you a quote from Coach Roberts, Dave Roberts, about Yu Darvish and his giving up his pitches. He says, I know he wanted the baseball. That he's talking about Yu Darvish. He was anxious to have the ball. He wanted to come back in Dodger Stadium and prove to everybody that, hey, I can go beyond where I did in Houston and vindicate myself. And he said, this is after the game, he said, I know he was prepared. I just can't explain the results. I really can't. And in the first inning, he goes on to say Cody Bellinger didn't help Darvish much with Springer advancing to third on a right side grounder. Now, when you watch the play, in fact, it may be coming up right behind me. In fact, it is. This is the play where in just a second, when he hits the ball, Yu Darvish runs to first base to cover the bag when Cody was pulled off the bag to field the ground ball. He throws a throw to him behind him where he was, not where he is. And that's a key thing. It's a fundamental skill that you learn. You throw to the bag, trusting the integrity. If you've done it once, you're going to do it again. And they practice these things. So Yu Darvish is heading to the bag, expecting the ball to be at the bag. Well, not there, not there, and that is unfortunate because it was an error in the ball, and then Darvish falls, loses his footwork after he fields the ball, and that's unfortunate, and because that was right in the beginning of the game, and it kind of set things up. Now that brings into play something I know from being around the players and around the game, in this case, the World Series. The team knew about the possibility that Darvish was doing things on the mound and not covering his adjustment of the ball in his glove, so that a player on the field, let's say at second base, could in fact, here's the play right behind me, if I might interrupt, right there, and the ball goes behind him and he falls. It should have gone to the bag and in leading him in essence, so that you could catch the ball and touch the bag all in one motion. All right, so back to my point. They knew about Yu's skills and that he's an outstanding pitcher. He's a great leadoff pitcher. But apparently he, in his motion, when he adjusts the ball in his glove to correspond to the pitch that was called, he was giving that away. And players on base could see that and then communicate a signal of some sort to the hitter at the base. Now the rules of the game in Major League Baseball say they can't, actually give him a signal. It can't be direct. It's got to be somewhat subtle. Well, they were doing it and getting by with it. Something as simple as just grabbing the bill of their helmet could be something, or they could just, go shake their head like it's no for a curveball or off-speed pitch, or say, or nod their head up and down for a yes, that it's a fastball. Or maybe it's a touch the bill for a fastball and put your hands on your hips for a curveball. Now that kind of stuff they can get by with, if in fact they're picking up the pitches. So, Coach Roberts, he knows his player has great skill. He stands behind his player having great skill as a pitcher, and bringing it forward. But it's a mindset that sets that up for your skills to be delivered at the level of integrity, of the level of your experience. If I've done it once, I'll do it again. That's what integrity is all about. Just like if I say to you, I'm going to be there for you, you deliver. And there was some lack of deliveries by the Dodgers players in the key moments, the early key moments of the game, that caused some issues. And giving credit to the Houston Astros and taking nothing away from them, they had total control of their intangibles. They worked it. They did what they needed to do. They played with aggressive intent and got out early and took advantage of the errors that were created during the moments they had the ball in their hands to make a play. There was some amazing stuff going on. One of the players that stood out for me was Bregman on third base for the Houston Astros. That kid hustles. He is constantly hustles. In fact, right over my shoulder, he hustled, anticipated the play, and got, the rule of thumb is if you're on third base and the ball's hit to the right side of the diamond on the first base side, for all intents and purposes, you're busting to the plate. And he took a great lead to be able to do that and anticipated so that he was ready. He was in charge of his intangibles. He delivered with high integrity, the anticipation, and scored a run. Plus, he had to hustle to get it done. And Cody Bellinger didn't have a play at the plate. All he had was the play at first base for the force out. A lot of examples of when intangibles added to your integrity, your experience of showing others that you deliver when the moment's there for the plays that are yours. No words have to be spoken in those examples. You finish. The result is you finish. It's amazing. And I know that the Houston Astros, when we talk about skills, and I mentioned Breminger? Breminger. Is that? I'll have to get it correct here in a minute. But one of the other one is Altuve. Jose Altuve. He was touted for every time you go to the Houston Stadium. The chant of MVP went up, and he more than likely will get it. But his teammate at third base, quite the young athlete who is just outstanding, as is when Yu Darvish went down. His teammate comes in, Clayton Kershaw, and just gets after it. And some would question Coach Roberts about, well, maybe they should have started Clayton. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's just a matter of you believe in the kid, and some things didn't go his way, and they made the adjustments and brought Clayton in and stopped things for a while. But that Game 7, the whole series was amazing show of skills. All right, we're going to take a quick break. I didn't break early enough. I should have broken a few minutes ago, just to change the tone a little bit away from. But I'm excited about this topic: integrity and intangibles put together. It's amazing. And as you look over my shoulder, as a segue into this little break, Gurriel is at the plate. Before he came to his first at bat, he tipped his helmet to Yu Darvish as a sign of consideration for what he did. Me personally, I think he should have been suspended immediately and not allowed to play. Now, some would say, well, the home runs would have been taken away, would have been a different series. Yeah, but that's the consequences of the actions. He shouldn't have been allowed to play. And we don't. And when I'm saying this after the fact, I said it to colleagues before he hit home runs or was a factor in the outcome of a game. I think he should have been suspended immediately for the World Series because what he did was not acceptable. It's not just what he did; it's what he said as well. And he knew it. I mean, he made the conscious choice to do it. Just like the NFL makes a conscious choice. I like that segue. Made the conscious choice to honor our veterans. NFL honors the veterans on active duty and service to our members and families. We salute their service because it's Veterans Appreciation this week. Last night there was appreciation for that. There was a salute to our veterans. We want to make sure that we stay true to what they do and how they serve our country flawlessly in protecting us. There's a number of programs that are going on. I want to just mention that every NFL team is doing something to honor our veterans, and we're doing it in a way that is very, very classy. The Denver Broncos, they have done. The players did a military caravan to Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs. And it's their 6th annual visit with military members. And then they're going to follow that up on November 3rd, Monday, or November 3rd. Today's November 3rd. Monday, November 13th, the Broncos will host a Gatorade Junior Training Camp Play 60 clinic at UC Health Training Center, that's down by Dove Valley, for the children of servicemen and women from multiple local military bases in Colorado, as well as Tragedy Assistance Program for survivors. And that's the TAPS program with the military. The Broncos will also partner with Coca-Cola and the USO to host boy, I'm adding some stuff on here, to host an exclusive film session for members of the military and special guests in honor of Veterans Day. During Broncos training camp this past summer, the USAA and the Broncos hosted the NFL Boot Camp presented by USAA, where current military members competed in NFL-style drills. Awesome programs throughout the season, not just this weekend in specific honoring of veterans, but all throughout the OTA preseason and during the season. There's a number of different things that are going on throughout the NFL that are of note. One of those that's close to my heart, in addition to TAPS, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, is the Wounded Warrior Project. The NFL partners with the Wounded Warrior to connect wounded veterans with free programs and resources that empower them to live their lives to the fullest on their terms. This support has enabled Wounded Warrior programs to fund the expansion of combat stress recovery programs, as well as post-traumatic syndrome disorder programs to help our veterans, our wounded veterans, recover, create a recovery process for themselves. The other thing I want to note is the efforts by the Denver Broncos cheerleaders. They have done some outstanding programs. They've traveled to over 100 different locations overseas to support the veterans at their bases. They are also doing a program with the USO to supply any number of things. Remember, the veterans, they have to come out of pocket for things like shaving cream, razors, magazines, comic books, movies, whatever it might be, because because. And so if you want to donate something to a veteran, and you're a Colorado supporter and fan of the Denver Broncos, by all means, look at the Denver Broncos website and check out the efforts that the Denver Broncos cheer squad is doing for them. And I want you to also do a shout out to Ranga, at Ranga. He's one of my guys. He is in the Army, and one of his special people, Nikki, is on the Denver Broncos cheerleading squad. So shout out to Ranga and Nikki. for all the great work that they do. One for protecting our country and keeping us safe, and the other one is being a great dancer and entertainer on the sidelines for our Broncos game. They're two wonderful people that I enjoy saying hello to and welcoming them to the show. At KUHSdenver.com, you're listening to 360 Performance Talk every Friday at 11. We're talking about, our theme today is intangibles added to integrity, and that equals a finish that may be optimized beyond what you expected in your performance. And we're talking about the Dodgers versus the Houston Astros World Series. Went 7 games. First time in Dodger history that the series has gone 7 games, and the first time that the 7th game was at Dodger Stadium. A lot of records were broken with the Dodgers and the Houston Astros in a lot of different categories. We're into our segment now. We just finished skills. We'll do a little wrap up on skills. There was, typically you look at any competition. There's a key area, key position, be it skill position or a key connection of positions that make up the focus. And in baseball, it tends to center around the mound and what's going on in that 60 some odd feet of distance from the mound to home plate to see how many players get down the 90 feet to first base and beyond. And hopefully are all the way around to score runs. Well, we had some doozies. We had longest World Series game in 5 hours plus. We had the runs, the offensive production by both teams at moments when it needed to be. And if you look behind me, there's a young man behind me that his skills came out. He connected his intangibles with his integrity and equaled finish almost every time he came to the plate, as well as plays in the outfield. This is young man Chris Taylor, who is, and there's his first hit. His leadoff hit was a double against the wall in Game 7 against the McCuller, who's on the mound. He left the game about as quickly as did Yu Darvish in that game. So as we bridge from the skills segment, there was no question the skills were on the field for both teams, and many of them delivered, as Chris Taylor did in Game 7 for his first at-bat with a double, as he had done the day before against Norton. I'm looking at something I said Norton. Against Verlander. And he had done that consistently against Verlander, even in Houston. So Chris is a great talent that came out and said he delivered. He was the number one, the first hitter at bat in the entire series, and proved that he deserved that spot time after time. Whether it was going long in a count, his mental condition. That's the bridge we're doing here, from skill to mental condition. In baseball, it's the first 1 or 2 hitters. If you can get the pitcher to go deep in the count with you, whether you strike out or get on base, that benefits the hitter behind you. And in this case, it's Seager who comes up to bat behind Chris Taylor. Corey Seager brought his skills to the plate as well. And all 3 of those guys, Taylor, Seager, and Bellinger, did a great job of taking the pitcher long, which could have contributed. I mean, in my opinion, it did contribute to McCuller coming out of the game earlier than perhaps I'm sure he anticipated. So the mental condition that you have coming to the plate in those situations. Now remember, this is Game 7 of the World Series, and lots of things going around you before the game started. What do you do to get your mental condition in focus? Well, I know with talking to Chris Taylor, it's just to sit down and think about what have I done in the past? What do I know? You bring information. You exercise your intangibles. You exercise your breathing and your thought processes and creating visions about what the pitch looks like in certain what will the pitch be in certain situations of the count. If it's 2-1 or 0-2 or 3-1 or 1-0, what's he going to throw me? I know with Corey Seager, as you see behind me, the pitch that was thrown to him consistently as a left-hander was that inside either changeup or slider or curveball to see if they could get that awesome target in that down and in target for Corey, and then they would throw a changeup after that. They did really well. The Houston Astros really impressed me with their pitching, hitting that spot against left-handed hitters, that down and in spot that is very tough to get the barrel of the bat on and put the ball in play. But Seager eventually got that done, despite what you see behind me as an out early in the game. But that's that mental condition. You take your skills. You've got your skill set there. You know you've delivered it time and time again. Now it's coming to you another time, in a very key time, emotionally charged time, and you have to rely on your mental conditioning. What did I do to get myself prepared and focused and be back on track? It's a tough situation. But as you saw during the game, on both sides, whether it was Springer coming to bat or Altuve coming to bat, all of those young men are very aggressive. They come in there saying, "You challenge me. I know who you are. You know, you're Kershaw, or you're even Darvish." I mean, he still threw great pitches despite how quickly he came out of the game. But you know, George Springer comes to the plate. He's going, "You got to show me that you're able to put this ball in a place that I'm not expecting." Now, Coach Roberts would say maybe they did expect it. Maybe they did know. Maybe their mental condition was so amped because they knew what was coming. Well, interestingly enough, when Kershaw came in after Darvish, they know the kid throws, amazing spinners. He just rips it. Well, here's a headline in the Houston Chronicle on the front page with Altuve. Jose is putting his hand to his head after that game, and he's going, "Look at that, man. I couldn't quite get it together." And he knows he's going to throw spinners. He knows that Kershaw is going to throw that curveball, and then he's going to have a 90-plus mile-an-hour fastball that he can pepper in there. Well, even with that intention and that ability that Kershaw has, and Altuve knows that's going to come, you still don't necessarily know when it's going to come. So that being said, there was a great win in Houston for the Dodgers, but then we get to Dodger Stadium, whole different story on Tuesday. When you have control of what you know about yourself, you bring it. In fact, right behind me is a good example of that. There's the starting pitcher the night of the 6th game when the series got even 3-up. He's out there in the outfield after that game, warming up, doing long tosses because he wants to be ready. And here he is then starting in that first inning, and with his fastball, he doesn't just casually plunk Turner. He nails him with an inside pitch, and they're on the phone right away. They're concerned. McCullers, is he on? Are his intangibles intact? And being able to, with high integrity, what we know he can deliver. Well, they're a little out of balance. He wasn't finishing. He wasn't delivering what he could. And interesting enough, McCullers was taken out of the game before the 3rd inning. Now, that being said, you get a hitter like Cody Bellinger comes to the plate, and he's struggling, and he's not quite sure of himself. He also, as fans, you can see when the intangible, the understanding of what your intangibles are, that vision of what that pitcher is going to throw me is connected to the integrity of myself as a hitter. This kid is more than likely going to be Rookie of the Year because of what he's contributed. He's had over 30 home runs for the season. He's got results, but he's not really attacking the plate like he has in the past. For whatever the reason is, in his mind, he's not quite there. His mental conditioning skills haven't been honed. He's not there the way he has been in the past. And for some reason, the Houston Astros had him connected, and they knew what they needed to do. So in the at bat before, McCullough wasn't strong with Taylor, but he's stronger with the left-hander Bellinger and where he can put the ball. And that's extremely interesting how from one hitter to the next he's inconsistent. In fact, in that same first inning at bats, when Puig comes to bat, Yasiel Puig comes to bat, he dings him too, hits him square in the back and puts him on base. So now the bases are loaded, but regretfully, the Dodgers didn't have it quite connected enough with the intangibles, the mental conditioning for themselves to really make it happen. And they leave men on base. In that game 7, they left over 10 players, I think it might have been 11 or 12 players, on base without scoring. They finally scored in later innings and got 1 run, but it just wasn't connecting for them. And definitely wasn't connecting for Bellinger. At least McCullough found that magic spot, that down and in spot, and took Bellinger's game out of his hand as a hitter. And it's very interesting how from one to the next, and Bellinger wasn't seeing the ball very well to know when the pitch inside and down was a ball. So mental conditioning in baseball, as the example about the intangibles, it's extremely important to get a clear vision that's backed up by what you know you can do, so that you build your confidence from inside, so that when you see that pitch you want, you're no hesitation. At the same time, when you see the pitch that isn't there, you can hold back and not swing on that pitch. If it's in the field, like the third baseman, number 2 for the Houston Astros, when the ball is hit, he's on third base and the ball is hit to the right side of the diamond, there is no hesitation. He knows his speed. He knows what he's got. The intangible is his vision, what he sees, and it clicks, and he takes off without hesitation. That's a combination of his intangibles, what he knows to be true, in the integrity, and they're connected, and he finishes. He scores a run, putting Bellinger in a position where he only has the out at first base, the force out at first base. The same thing is true in the outfield. You're making the shifts. The Dodgers, for example, for you fans out there, whether you're a Dodger fan or a Houston fan, during the game, the Dodgers outfielders will get cards. If there's any break in the game because there's a change in pitchers, you'll see somebody from the dugout run out to the outfield and give the guys these cards about our pitcher and the hitters coming up and how they're going to shift and play and how they're going to rotate out there. That's statistics. That's data management that the teams are using to regulate their players and how they're going to play on the field. Now, that impacts your mindset, your skill, and your mental condition. So you know what these pitchers do and who they're going to face as hitters, but you don't know when. So you want to get that mental condition set up. Now, the cards are helpful because it's a reminder. So you look at it and you check it out when the cards come out as you change pitchers for the team. But it's good to practice it up front. It's good to what if and work through scenarios so that your mental conditioning is at its peak. You've created visions for yourself about your hitting. You know what the data cards say in advance because you've gone over it in your head. You've gone over it pre-game, and you create a mindset for yourself that's going to actuate your skill level so that when you get out in the field and you're looking at the hitter that's up there, the new pitchers come in, you're going to mentally go through that. Now, there were a couple of times when another piece of mental conditioning is real important is the environment, the influence of the environment on your mental conditioning. For example, in the Houston park, there was this little cutout in center field that the walls were, it was just very interesting how you would play things off of different surfaces. Some of the surfaces in left and right were padded. In center field, it was a mixed bag because you had a piece that jutted out, and then it cut back in, and then there was this other different surface where the bullpen was. There was glass or plexiglass or whatever it is, the ball would careen off of that differently. Whereas in Dodger Stadium, it's pretty much all consistent, the same material. That influences how you're going to handle that ball coming off the wall. And in Dodger Stadium, obviously the Dodger players had no problem, but as a Houston Astro, you're going to play that differently and make sure you watch how you play it. And that's going to impact your mindset and then your skill level and how you execute that. And you're going to be mentally going through conditioning yourself routinely in the outfield based on the hitters and what might come up. So I would imagine for a Houston Astro, when Chris Taylor comes to bat or a Jock Peterson comes to bat, you're going to be looking at and considering how does that ball come off of that pad and how I'm going to play it as I see it come over my head. And hopefully the Dodger player comes over the head of the Houston Astro outfielders quite a bit. And it's interesting to talk about the environment and its impact on your mental condition and how you finish. And we're gonna get to how you finish here in just a minute on performance results as it is leveraged off of your mental condition. But I want to just make sure I remind you that there's going to be some great things happening this weekend with all of the NFL teams, and they're honoring the military and the not-for-profit partners that they work with, like Wounded Warrior, the USO, TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, and many others around the country. Because remember, each franchise will be doing something different this weekend. The Broncos, as I said, have been doing visits down to the Peterson Air Force Base. They will have something on Monday, the 13th, with Gatorade and Junior Training Camp on Play 60 clinics at the UC Health Training Center down there in Dove Valley. They've also been working with the TAPS organization, the Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors, that helps our military work through PTSD issues. Just a couple other examples. For example, the Green Bay Packers, they work with the American Red Cross at Lambeau Field. They coordinate a holiday Mail for Heroes drive. So they're sending great wishes and comments and pictures and drawings from kids over to the military just to generate a smile for them. The Green Bay Packers will be doing things like camouflaging their goalposts, wrapping the pylons. There'll be wall banners, all kinds of environmental things that will create a mental condition that substantiates a very positive mindset. You see how my 4 segments work here? Mindset, skills, mental conditioning that result, hopefully, in, for the NFL, you're giving of yourself and what you can do to help the military recognize the fact that we as citizens appreciate what they do for us, and you're using the NFL and your affiliation with the NFL as a fan, as a supporter of the many programs in your neighborhood. For me, the Wounded Warrior program is big. So if you're in the stands this weekend at any NFL football game, when you're out there at wherever we might find you, and we've got a lot of different folks out in the world, as well as right here locally. We've got people in British Columbia, in Spain, Broomfield, Colorado, obviously, France, Bulgaria, in Blackwood, Victoria, Russia, all over the world. And there's lots of appreciation for football all over the world. And in Mexico, my colleagues and friends down in Mexico, we have, let's see, what do we got? El Centro, California, Kelowna, British Columbia, again in Indonesia, Bulgaria, again, is popping up on the screen. Let me just refresh a little bit to see what else we've got out there. Yeah, it's very active. Thank you for your support of 360 Performance Talk on KUHSdenver.com. Every Friday, we're here taking a look at performance issues and how to be a better performer. And we're in our last segment, which is performance results. Now, remember, when I talk about performance results, it's about process. There were lots of processes going on throughout the World Series Game 7. One of them was the process of dealing with Yu Darvish and him getting himself back on track. In the second inning, the Dodgers were down 2-0, and this is the inning that both Darvish and then eventually in the bottom half, the Houston Astros pitcher was also taken out. So both of them set a record. First time in World Series history that the starting pitchers were taken out before the third inning. So lots of different records, both good and bad. So the performance results, all told in the World Series, are not about necessarily the trophy that was given to the Houston Astros at the end. There were lots of different performance results that were indicative of behaviors and mental conditioning efforts or lack thereof that added on to the mindset that one comes into the game with, but also the mindset that happens during the game and what has to be renewed and recovered throughout the game. I mean, it would be one thing at 2-0 going into the second inning for the Dodgers to go, my goodness, what's going on with us here? What have we created for ourselves? It's really, really interesting. And yet, Yu Darvish, as he goes and faces the hitters in the second inning, he had some optimistic things happening. And so he's looking for performance results of hitting his spots, getting better at that. But at the same time, as I said in the mindset segment, Coach Roberts was concerned about people picking up his pitches, not because there was anything not crooked or underhanded going on. You may have an issue with protecting his hand and the ball, being him moving the ball around in his glove. And he knew that because I had discovered it back in Houston. He was giving up his pitches because he wasn't protecting the ball in his glove. If you watch any number of the pitchers, Jansen, the closer for the Dodgers, Verlander, the great starter for the Astros, how they cover the ball even when they're going through their motion. Kershaw, he raises his hands up and keeps the glove on top of the ball, so there's no way you can see what his hand looks like in the glove. But with you, there were some times when he can be picked off as far as what's going on in his glove. In fact, with a guy on first base, Yu's glove is high enough they could see over his shoulder perhaps as to what pitch he was going to throw. And in this particular, in the second inning, it's interesting. George Springer Gurriel gets on base, and McCann is ahead of him, and McCann's now on second base. And I think at that point, it might be that McCann gives signals. His performance result on second base is he's going to give the next hitter an idea of what the pitch is going to be. There's too much of that going on, and yet at the same time, when you look at the skill level of Darvish, when he threw the pitches, he wasn't spinning the ball. He was not tight on his spin, so he was not executing, which could go back to his own mindset going into the game. He was not confident enough with himself to really bear down and what I call pinch that ball and bring it in. And Josh Riddick is at the plate now in the second inning, and Josh has not been very productive. His performance results at the plate were not very high. So this is an opportunity for you to get back on top and really start executing and performing at a high level and really bringing his pitches into spots that Riddick would not be able to hit. And he'd been successful with Riddick in the past. So the coach is looking at this and going, hey, I believe that he's got a real good shot at delivering results. On a couple of occasions during that at-bat, you did a great job of bringing his pitches and putting them in spots that were hard to hit, difficult to hit. Well, the history speaks for me in what's going on. So you threw the pitches that he needed to throw, but they advanced hitter. So I'm not going to dwell on that so much right now, as much as I'm going to continue to dwell on performance results. Remember, it's process oriented. What do I want to deliver in my results in this segment of my process. If it's a pitcher, it's one hitter at a time, one pitch at a time. That's the process. That's the performance results. There's a spot I want to hit. That's the results I want to get. When I add those all up, the ultimate goal when you add up all those pitches is a no-no. Perfect game. No hits, no runs. That's a perfect game. Well, that doesn't happen very often. So it's one pitch at a time. You don't think about getting a no-no or even a no-hitter. You think about each pitch, one pitch at a time against the hitter that I'm throwing against and what I've learned to be what they can't hit, what's difficult for them to hit. And that's what I want to try to deliver. The same thing is true with hitters. You are looking at it from the other side. What are the performance I want to get? I want to get the pitcher throwing as many pitches as possible so that I make it as convenient for the next hitter to be able to predict what that pitcher is going to throw at me. Performance results. Now you can take those philosophies and not under the window of a metaphor of a baseball outing and just look at what are the processes that drives your optimal performance. What do you want to do to make the best opportunity for you to deliver your best? And in most cases, you know by your practice what that means. You know through your practice what it is that I do that allows me to deliver my best. And in today's professional athletics, when you start adding the knowledge and the data they have on hitters, on pitchers, on position players, or in basketball, we've got the NBA starting up, and we've got the NFL in full swing now with games this weekend and a new quarterback for the Broncos and Brock Osweiler coming in. I was asked this morning by colleagues about Brock Osweiler.